Hi, everyone. Welcome to the WeShape podcast.
Hey, guys.
I'm here with Nina. I'm Katie. It's just the two of us today.
I know. It's nice. I have so much room for activities.
Yes, so many activities. Our little one is sick, so Tyler's sitting with her at home, so we'll miss him, but I think we are going to have a good time. We always do.
Yeah.
We survive.
This has been such a season for illness, man. It's been a good one. Like, this year's been hard.
My children have been sick for 6 months.
I think they're going to go for like a sickness bingo. Like, they're kind of like, which of all the different illnesses can we get? Like, have they gotten bingo yet? Because I think they're close.
We're almost reaching bingo.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to,
Is there a prize at the
practice in
end?
surrender, because I have so much health anxiety that, like, every time they get sick, I'm just like, here, you get to practice overcoming this health anxiety so much. It's a season of practice for me. So much surrender. And you're gonna, sorry girl, but you're on the way to being in the boat of sick kids. And it's
when this baby gets here, I'm really worried for my husband's immune system. It's the things that go into her mouth.
Your husband is like one of the most solid people I've ever met. And he's ill all the time.
Constantly.
Like, I love him to pieces.
I feel like him and Ellie are like kind of same.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm worried for him.
Me too.
When your baby comes.
Well, we'll just be sneaking gummy vitamins like into his, you know?
Well, I mean, I do try to always, I love when he comes over. I'm like, do you want a vitamin? But I was talking with you earlier this morning because I have this curiosity, because I feel like the people around us, like even Tyler, like, and my kids, they're sick a lot, your husband, I'm like, is there something that's happening like deep inside of our psyche that's like, the world's relying on us to do some things, and so like we're just not gonna get sick as much? I like knock on wood, because like we had norovirus in my house and I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I'm knocking on wood a lot, because I'm like, geez, how am I avoiding all of these illnesses? I don't know.
Someone's got to keep the household still going, I guess.
I don't know. Anyway, the mind's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And so I just have so much curiosity if like there's data around, do women who are running homes, and Tyler is a contributing partner, but I will say that I probably contribute a little bit more. And I'm like, are these women the ones who are not getting sick? I just have curiosity.
I always attributed it to the XX chromosome versus the XY, because isn't the Y like a partial chromosome? Like, isn't it like missing a piece? And that.
Oh, we're going down
anyway.
the lane.
That's a different podcast.
Anyway. We're here. You and I are here today. We're gonna rock it. We have a wonderful guest. I've actually been on this person's podcast, and I loved her conversation so much that I asked if we could have her on our podcast. So she's here. Why don't we start by you reading her bio?
Absolutely.
And then we'll just jump right in. I want to start with the first question I'm really excited about.
I'm really excited about this bio, actually. I read all the bios, and this one's fun. So anyway, today we have with us Toni Marinucci, who's a registered dietitian and owner of Tips with Toni, who ironically teaches people how not to diet. Her team of RDs provide online nutrition coaching to help women break free from the all or nothing mindset and encourage balance instead. Toni's mission is to end restrictive diet culture by providing simple tips to healthy living with incorporating foods you love. She recently gave a TEDx talk and wrote a #1 bestselling book titled Once Upon a Diet, where she discusses the parallels between dieting, dating, and romantic relationships and how we treat them the same.
Whoa. Welcome, Toni. Can you hear us?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
We are really excited to dive into this conversation. I'm going to jump right in. I want to know, how is dieting like dating?
Okay. Well, quick backstory. I grew up overweight and insecure, and I thought that losing weight would somehow make me worthy of love and acceptance. So I basically was on this journey of pursuit of weight loss from a really early age. Unfortunately, 9 years old is really where it all started for me. Wow. I was getting messages. I was getting teased at school about my weight. I was getting messages at home that I needed to lose weight. I was literally being told things like if I didn't lose the weight, I would never get a boyfriend, which is kind of something weird that you would say to a 9-year-old. But anyways.
Yeah, that's wow.
So anyways, so I went on this pursuit of weight loss. I tried all of the, the quick fixes, the fad diets, the extremes, the eating as little as possible, exercising as much as possible. Obviously, like it wasn't that extreme at 9, but it was starting, and then it only just got worse as I got older. Anyways, long story short, skipping over like a whole lot, I went to school to become a registered dietitian. Now I help people, find balance in their eating habits, and I help them to not do the fad diets and, really just work on balance and mindfulness and loving their body and, treating it with care and all the things. So anyways, fast forward, I've been a dietitian for a few years now. I've been on social media, like blogging and all that. I had my podcast. And yet it's like, I felt like no matter how much I was sharing this message that, you know, you can love your body and still treat it with care, and you don't have to go into the extremes. I was getting so frustrated because I was like watching all of these women, like before they would start working with us, they would jump from diet to diet, hoping each one was like, quote unquote, the one. And they basically were acting like Cinderella stepsisters, trying to jam their feet into something that like clearly wasn't a good fit. And that's when I like had my aha moment, because at that time I had just gotten out of a serious relationship. And then here I was once again. I knew that person wasn't for me, yet I stayed with him for a year and a half. Why? Because I wanted to fit the mold of check done, I had a partner, right? I never once questioned the quality of that relationship. I just wanted to, you know, feel like I was loved and accepted and worthy and all of the things. And so I realized, I was like, wait a minute, like before you go on judging, first of all, Toni, like you were in that position 10, 15 years ago. So you know exactly how they're feeling. And then second, you still haven't figured it out when it comes to like love and relationships. And that's how I realized, wow, like so many people diet like they date. They just jump from one to the other, and they never really like question, you know, do I even like this? Is this working for me? Like, what about the quality of like, yeah, maybe they lost weight, but like maybe they're also miserable in order to get there. Like there's just, I realized that there's so many parallels, and that's how we diet like we date. And my TEDx talk that you mentioned ended up turning into a book, because I was like, there's so much more here than I thought.
That is crazy. Like,
it's
I can't
so
believe
true,
that
though.
like hadn't occurred to me, because
It's
dang.
so true, though.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many parallels for how a lot of females are raised in our culture around where their worth lies.
Yes.
And that is directly linked to relationships, to food, to how we connect with others. It's like,
even the fact that you mentioned the Cinderella shoe, like that's a message I've had since I was like, I don't know, just 5. Like, put your foot in the shoe. You want Prince Charming, you know?
yeah, it's not just in our immediate families. It trickles out to our community, to our culture, to, I mean, it's everywhere that there. And this is the thing, and this is what's hard about this topic and about dissecting these things, is a lot of these beliefs are subconscious. We're not like consciously like, okay, I know that this person isn't right for me, or I know this diet is probably going to make me feel like shit, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's like, no, you're doing it because it's subconscious belief. You're doing it because you think you're going to get something from it. And so I think it's so important to have these conversations. And it's so funny, Toni, because we bring guests on all the time who talk about this. But what I love about your perspective is you're looking at it through a different lens. And I think if we can continue to provide opportunities, well, what about, we're saying the same thing, right? But it's like through a completely different lens, maybe someone will go, oh, I've been trying to put the shoe on. I've been trying to make it fit. And when I really examine it, it's not fitting. And it's this idea, we said this on one of our other episodes, around like my Instagram life looks good, but how the hell do you feel? You know what I mean? Like, let's like cut the crap, right? Like that is not, why do we think that that's going to be the thing? So, I mean, this dieting and dating correlation are just,
it's brilliant. I
It's
feel like
brilliant.
I need some time to absorb.
Yeah.
My mind feels kind of blown right now.
it's brilliant. It's
Because I've
brilliant.
made those choices in both avenues, like you said. Like I have definitely been like, I'm going to make the shoe fit. Like I'm just going to, this isn't feeling great, but we're just going to do it anyway.
And that's why, I mean, and that's why at WeShape, when people come in for a workout and then I go, surprise, we're actually going to try to see if we can crack the door to curiosity so that you can develop a deeper connection with yourself. That's why we're doing that, because we know that the relationship with yourself is the most important thing that you can offer yourself, and that is directly correlated to why you're exercising, to why you're eating the food that you're eating and trying to diet, to why you're picking that person to date, to why it's all related. And if I have to get you in for a workout and then we kind of switch and say, oh, actually, we're going to teach you how to love yourself, I mean, that's fine. But it's all to think that it's not related. It's like that idea of how you do something is how you do everything.
Yep.
And
1000%.
so, I mean, so what, like, do you, when you're working with clients, do you use this analogy? I mean, are you like, please watch my TED Talk, like evaluate this analogy and see if this is true for you?
Yeah, well, it usually comes up. And I think I think when people hear what my book is about, they can almost, especially when I wrote it, I mean, it's been a few years, but when I wrote it, it was really for when I was in my 20s. Now I'm in my 30s, right? And so coming out of it, even like people are like, oh, well, I'm in a marriage and I'm happy. Like, so that really isn't free. I'm not dating. But it's not just like dating people. It's more like it could be in your relationship. Like your quality of your relationship is where you can kind of take a deeper look of like with your quality of your nutrition. And when I say quality of your nutrition, it doesn't mean everything has to be perfect. Like the quality of like, is it balanced? Do you like the foods that you're eating, right? The quality of your
the relationship that you have with food.
Yeah, the relationship you have with food, the relationship you have with your body, like is there area for improvement? So often when working with clients, whether they're single and dating or in a committed relationship, married or partnership or what have you, like it usually comes up because very often they'll say things to us like, you know, my husband loves every ounce of me, but I can't even like, to me, to take my clothes off, it's like I don't even want him to see me that way. I keep the lights off, like stuff like that. And it's, you know, our job to really help them to see not only what their husband sees or what their partner sees, but to see within themselves like that they actually are lovely and wonderful and worthy, and they don't need to change their body in these drastic ways in order to feel that, in order to see that. So it comes up more than not, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's that idea we talk about here, which is like if you're here to like get a number on a scale, we know for certain that's not going to provide the worth that you're hoping to get. Like if you can't feel that worth and that deep connection with self today in the body that you have, it doesn't really matter what the scale says. And so that's why we're always telling people recycle your scales, because it actually just makes it worse. It's like taking you away, and it's like taking you away from that connection with self. And if you're literally reliant on that number to make you happy, or you're reliant on how many Instagram likes you have, or you're reliant on people's compliments of how you look, or if you look like the person in the magazine, it's like you are literally seeking outside of yourself to find worth and value. And those things are not predictable. Those things are ever changing. I was on Shaun T's podcast yesterday, and we were laughing because
I was just on his podcast too. Isn't he amazing? God,
he's so great.
He's literally the best human on
the
planet.
He is so great. But we were talking about this idea of like, he's like, yeah, you know, I'm at the pool, and like we were like talking about like, oh, it's like people want to compliment you, or you see someone else, and I say, yeah, like what I do in those situations is someone does offer me a compliment for something, I say, thank you. And then I have an internal dialogue that goes, ooh, your ego liked that compliment. Not as a way of judging myself, but as a way of seeing which part of myself really enjoyed that. But I said, how different does it hit, Shaun, when I say, you are such an incredible human, and like I see your empathy and vulnerability in your community, and you really offer people a lot to connect with. Like that is like such a different way to feel valued, and it's still coming from the outside, but those things that are allowing people to see those are starting from the inside. And we were joking. I was like, plus if we're constantly chasing this external validation, whether it be that number or I want to look like this person on the magazine or whatever, eventually, I'm sorry, we're all gonna be 80 years old someday, and we're just gonna age out of that validation anyway. So it's like, let's start doing this work now. Let's save ourselves the midlife crisis, is what we were talking about, and let's learn to connect with ourselves in this way now, so that we're not reliant on that external validation to feel what I call fake fulfillment anyway. I mean, even if you feel good about it in the moment, that's not really gonna make you feel great forever. It's just in that moment.
I think what's so funny about that too is like I have a couple friends who are either on a motherhood journey or a postpartum journey right now, or they're pregnant. I happen to be pregnant right now. Like bodies are changing as we grow and age, and all these different things happen, right? And like you want that external validation of like, am I still cute? Do I still whatever? Like I used to live in a body that looked different, and change is inevitable. Our bodies are supposed to change. Like they're not supposed to stay how you were when you were 15. That just isn't how it works. But like they'll get the validation from, like you said, oh, their husband loves every ounce of them or whatever. I have a friend who her husband is like, I've never been more in love with you or more attracted to you now that we've had this baby. And like, she's like, thanks, but I know you don't mean that. Like it's so funny. We seek external validation all the time. We're trained really to want that. And then even when we get like what we kind of wanted, a lot of times we're like, well, they're just being nice. You know, it's never enough. It doesn't ever count.
Yeah.
But that external validation, like to use that example that you said, is because she's holding a narrative for what it should be.
Yes, I should look different. Then I can earn this compliment.
And just the simple like pausing to understand that that is a construct. Somebody taught you that belief. And because of that, that's why you are looking for it.
Yes.
Someone could have taught you the opposite belief, and then you would be looking for that.
Absolutely.
We are not born hating ourselves. We are not born with body types being trends. Like, these are not inherent human qualities.
Yeah, it's a learned thing.
These are all learned behaviors. These are constructs that we were told to believe. And so that's why even yesterday when we were on his podcast, we were laughing because I was like, I hate to always come back to this, Sean, but like, when you keep asking yourself why, like, why am I doing this? Why, and then you get that answer, and then why am I doing this? And you get that, and you just keep going. It's gonna link back to something in your childhood. That's just the human experience. That we don't get to control the constructs that we are asked to like subscribe to this belief. Like, we don't get that choice as a child. And I know that it feels like really like, oh, your child, and like we're going down this deep path, but it's true. And it doesn't, I feel like I wish people would talk about it more, because nobody gets out of their childhood having to deconstruct some beliefs. Rather, they had the best childhood or the worst childhood. It doesn't, I mean, it's a little bit irrelevant in the sense that like no one's really getting out of that with some belief that negatively impacts their life today. So I'm like, just keep asking why. Why do I need that validation? Why do I believe that? Why is this happening? And it likely will lead back to some experience earlier on in your life that allowed you to think that that was the way. But knowing that that was not a belief that is necessarily true, it's just a belief that a lot of people subscribe to, I think can help us sort of unclick from that narrative a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
It's definitely empowering to even have that knowledge and knowing that. One thing I say is if you were taught, it can be untaught. Like, so you can unlearn that narrative. You have to challenge it consistently and constantly, but you can totally, unlearn. If you learned it, you can unlearn it. And I find that to be very empowering when people hear that and understand that.
I love that. I want to talk, there was another question we had written down before this episode, and I want to ask this question because I get confused by this a lot. And so I'm going to switch gears here a little bit, but I want to check in about, we had written down this question that says, what is the difference between disordered eating and eating disorders? Can you help paint some light to that for us, Toni?
Yeah. So, an eating disorder, there's many different types of eating disorders, and they have a very specific diagnostic criteria that fall in the DSM-5. So as a registered dietitian, I can't diagnose someone with an eating disorder, but I can help treat with the process. But they're usually diagnosed by a mental health professional, like a therapist, and then because it's actually a mental health disorder. So eating disorders usually are symptoms or byproducts of things like trauma. Not always, it could just be the world that we live in and all that, but there's usually some sort of OCD, anxiety, depression, trauma that usually is underneath it. And
Have
it
they
is a
found
mental health disorder.
Yeah, have they found a genetic component?
That's actually a great question. And I don't believe so. I mean, I guess the question is like mental health is genetic, certain parts. So I don't know if eating disorder specifically, because I also think it's environmental. So I think it's like kind of like genetics, it's kind of like depending on your environment, is something expressed or not.
Right. Switched on or switched off.
Yeah.
So potentially, yeah. But all that to say, eating disorders, like they have a very specific criteria. And so what I find is not everybody fits in those very specific criterias, but they usually have like 1, 2, or 3 of them, and then something else doesn't quite fit. So that's what I would consider disordered eating. So for example, someone might be completely preoccupied about food. They might feel guilt or shame after eating. They might feel that they need to earn their food through excessive exercise or skipping meals. They might cut out whole food groups. They might, keep a very rigid meal plan or program out of the fear that if they don't, they're going to spiral out of control. These are disordered eating tendencies that some people with eating disorders also have, but they might also, with the thing that I find unfortunately really challenging in the eating disorder community or in the mental health field, is that they would normally also need to have a weight criteria. So for example, someone with anorexia nervosa, they might, eat a very little number of calories. They fall into a specific criteria, but then they also have to have a BMI of under like 18, for example. As a registered dietitian, and even I think where it's getting better in the mental health field, we're starting to notice like weight doesn't actually matter.
Wow.
Weight is not, you can't just because someone, isn't in an underweight category doesn't mean they're not doing those things like skipping meals and not eating and their hair is falling out because they're not getting adequate nutrition. Like they can still have certain symptoms, but not have all of those categories. So the reason why I like to bring attention and awareness to this is because diet culture mimics disordered eating a lot of the time.
Yeah, a lot of those things you said sounded normal to me. Like, oh yeah, cutting out a food group. Like, okay, like that's normal. People do it all the time.
Well, and that's the problem. That's the problem. Like that we live in a society and a culture that basically like praises disordered eating. Like how many people do you know, especially women, where they say that they have a banana for breakfast, a salad for lunch, and maybe like some chicken and vegetables for dinner? And that to them think that that's healthy. Yeah. And then they wonder why they're struggling with overeating at night or on the weekends, because a banana is not breakfast.
Right.
Or they're excited that they just have coffee for breakfast. Coffee is not breakfast. Right. Yeah. That is something that's been taught because we have told the narrative that we should eat as little as possible and exercise as much as possible if we wanted to lose weight, because somehow losing weight makes us feel better.
But then we actually add another layer on that. We go, well, we're intermittent fasting, so we're healthy.
Yeah, now it's a health activity.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so then it's like even more disguised, right? It's like, it's like not just that this disordered eating is there, but now we're going to throw health terms on top of it, which is going to like just do a bunch of just, bypassing over the fact that what's really going on. So it's like even trickier.
Absolutely. And the thing that I talk about in my book is because I was in an overweight body and there was a period in my life where I was exercising excessively and only eating vegetables, literally, I was being praised for it.
Right.
Because I was looked at like, oh my God, good for you. Wow. I was athletic. Even though I was always in a bigger body, I was athletic. So I played varsity basketball, volleyball, all the things. So those practices are grueling. They're 3-hour practices, they're tryouts, all that. I would come home and exercise more. And I would tell my mom, I want to get on, I want to make sure I get on the team, like during tryouts, like I just want vegetables and water. That's it. And I was praised for that. Like, you're so hardworking. Good for you. Like, wow, look at your determination. That is not healthy. That is disordered eating. And you can even argue that it was probably because then I would binge on the weekends and then I would feel guilt and shame and then the cycle would continue. That's how everybody's living all of the time, unfortunately. That's the normal. And that's not normal. The starting over on Monday, starting over next week, starting over next month, starting over next year. Your life is ongoing. Right. And we have to stop with this start and stop narrative, the all or nothing mentality. It's literally destroying your relationship with food, and it's taking away from your ability to enjoy life.
Hey there, if you're enjoying the WeShape podcast and you've heard us talk about WeShape before, then you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, what is WeShape? Well, at WeShape, we create personalized at-home workouts for every single one of our members. These are workouts where every single movement is customized to you to help you connect with your body and care for your body in a much more meaningful way. We also have a community of people there to support you, to help uplift you as you examine your beliefs, set new intentions, and again, start showing up for yourself as an act of self-care rather than trying to do your workouts as an act of self-judgment. And hey, if you're a fan of the podcast, we also do a live podcast discussion group on Zoom, as well as other Q&As, as well as free challenges for all of our members to help you get motivated to actually start taking action to caring for yourself so you can feel better in your body and about your body. So if you want to try WeShape for free for 2 full weeks, go to WeShape.com/podcast and you can get started today.
So one question that yes to everything you're saying.
We need a little applause button.
Yeah. We
for our podcast. Like,
oh my God, let's get one. And we'll put it here.
Button, guys. We
need a button. We're going to talk about that after. I'm very excited about that.
Emergency meeting.
Yeah. But one of the curiosities that I have, because the type of relationship I used to have with food was the one that was disguised in wellness, which was disordered. That was not working for me.
So I will say really quick, orthorexia is not a diagnosable eating disorder, but it has its own category. So it's considered disordered eating, but it's the obsession with healthy eating.
Yes.
That I think a lot of people nowadays fall into that criteria.
Absolutely.
And they're praised for it. Like, I remember being like, oh my God, the self-control, I just wish I could be like that.
Yeah.
You have so much willpower.
I was obsessive. Like, no this, no that, only this, only that. Then when I would eat something, I'd be like, oh no, I hope I don't get like this thing. Or it's like, it was insane. And one of the first things I noticed when I stopped doing that was how much more room I had in my mind for other thoughts and other things. Wow, how crazy. So that was like a huge win. I get to think about something else. But one of the things where I do get like confused, and I'd love just your opinion on this, right? So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just eat donuts all day. Like, my body does require vitamins and minerals and nutrition, right? But how do we do that in a way, like for instance, I would love to talk about this particular example. So my daughter has some health stuff. She's recovered from Lyme disease. She had a bunch of toxic mold exposure in a house we're in, and we're having to deal with that right now. And so it's hard because I want her just to do whatever. But I also notice that her body doesn't react. Like, she'll have stomach aches or different things that come up for her. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to control what you're eating, and I don't want to comment on the food, but I also want to figure out a way to create a relationship where we understand cause and effect, because sometimes like people do have a harder time, like maybe eating gluten, or, oh, if I eat too much dairy, my stomach hurts. So it's like, how do we have the lens of like making those connections without it being like disordered eating disguised as wellness?
Yeah. Oh my God. Such a great question. I'm going to answer in one sentence and then I'll elaborate because I never know how to just answer quickly. So the moment that I decided to stop focusing on how food made me look and instead focus on how food made me feel, that's when I found balance in my eating habits. So I say that to say there are certain foods that you might choose that don't choose you back, and it doesn't make you feel very good. So it's kind of like a partner in a relationship, right? Like, you don't want, I used to do this. I used to date people that clearly were not interested. I tried to convince myself that they were completely rejecting me. And I would just like put myself out there. And they just didn't want me. You deserve better. You deserve someone who wants you back. So the foods that you eat, you want to make sure that they are making you feel great. Dealing with children is harder, right? Because it's so sad when a kid has like a nut allergy or whatever it is, and like everybody at school is like eating all this stuff and they don't have their, they feel left out. So like that is a whole other conversation. But I will say, definitely we don't want to make comment on children's foods or their bodies. And I know you definitely don't make comments on her body. I know you don't do that, but point being, and for the listeners maybe, so like try your absolute hardest to refrain from that and really speak to like their character and who they are. But yeah, and then just remind her of that. Just say, hey, remember the last time we had this and you had a bellyache after? Like, do you want to try it again? Or do you want to, maybe we could try like this instead? Always give an option. Let them come to the conclusion. Yeah. It's the same thing with a picky eater, or even just actually raising healthy eaters in general. You want to provide options, not too many options, not 10 options, not one option, like one or two, like, and often what you can do is like, you don't want to do cookies or fruit because they're going to go with the cookies, right? You can say, do you want a chocolate chip cookie or do you want an Oreo? If you're offering cookies, or if you're offering and you want fruit, it's like, do you want an apple or do you want a banana? Like, let them choose, but make the choice be kind of something, because like they don't know and they are learning, and you do know better than them in that way. So you want to try to guide them gently, but not tell them exactly what to do unless they're allergic, right? That's very different than having like a sensitivity. And you just have to explain it like that. Like, I know you really want this, unfortunately, or so hard to everyone's child is different. So I don't want to give out too much advice. I know, because
my daughter's like, oh, it didn't hurt me. And I'm like, but you were complaining of something. Yeah. So I was,
the forgetter is real good.
Yeah. Even the other day, I just told her like, oh, I was noticing that, because I noticed for her in particular, if she eats like a lot of like if something has like red dye in it, or if it's like highly processed, or like she will say, like, she was even complaining last few days that her stomach was hurting, and I'm just like, okay, well, sometimes for mama, when I have a lot of bread and I don't have other things and I'm just eating bread, my stomach does kind of feel like off. And so I just pay attention to that, and maybe you could check in with yourself about that. And so just letting it go.
It's so hard because like I am someone who's lactose intolerant, and like I think it was like 10 years of torturing myself before I was like, wow, this really makes me feel bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you get to that point, you usually say like, this, it's just not even worth it.
Yeah.
It took a lot of suffering to get there.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
It's complicated. And I know with children it is complicated. It's like relearning how to have some of these dialogues, and then me also processing some of the guilt around how I was really particular with food and the foods that we had in our house, and what relationship she, luckily once she started getting a little older and communicating about her opinion about my beliefs around food, I was able to have a wake up call and say, whoa, I have to reevaluate my belief system. So I feel grateful that I was able to do that. But I also always have concern that like the first majority of her life, I was like really overly conscious of like, this food is healthy and this is not, and I didn't realize the privilege in that and all the things, and now I have better understanding, so I'm trying better, but it adds that extra layer of complication when she is dealing with health things. And so that's why I'm also trying to like figure out how to navigate, when your body is telling you something, or when you're in the middle of, dealing with a health issue, how do we listen to that need and not get down a path of restricted, like cutting out categories or restricted eating, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's like I'm trying to find that groove. It can be, I think, challenging.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. Like kids are a whole other ball game. But what I often will tell even like clients that I work with is when you like how you healed your relationship with food and your relationship with your body, and you did it. That is actually what she's seeing, and that's the most impactful thing that you can do. That is the best thing. You could ask like, well, can you say? And there's things you can say or not say, but what she's seeing and watching every day, that is making the biggest transformation in her. So just trust in that. And for the listeners who are really wondering, like, how do I have a balanced relationship with food, a healthy relationship with food, but then also like not go crazy with the things that I know, don't make me feel very good. And the answer is just, really understand, like when you hear or see dietitians or influencers on social media saying things like there are no good and bad foods, that often, like, a lot of people are like, what do you mean there are, like, blah blah blah. And like, we're not saying that broccoli is less nutritious than a cookie. Like, we're not idiots. We actually have a lot of schooling behind us to tell us that we know that the nutrition quality of broccoli is much more nutrient dense than a cookie. However, when we say there's no good or bad foods, we mean that morally you are not superior because you had your broccoli today. And you're not inferior if you had a cookie today. Like, your moral compass does not change, based on whether you had, vegetables or not. Now, when you can really understand that, and that's a narrative you got to practice over and over again, because we were taught it, we have to unlearn it. But if you can consistently challenge that narrative and instead focus on, what, I notice that when I have a balanced breakfast, I'm more focused at work, or I have more energy for my workout, or I'm not starving by the time I get home from a long day or whatever it is. So you know what, I'm going to practice on having a balanced breakfast. I also notice that when I stay hydrated with water, I'm less likely to have a headache. I'm less tired. I just feel better. I have more regular bowel movements. So I'm going to make sure I focus on drinking more water. And when you focus on, and there's so many different like components of it, not just food, but there's hydration, there's stress management, there's exercise, there's sleep. These are all like the foundational things of a healthy lifestyle. When you really want, like I said before, if you focus on how you want to feel, well, then you're going to be more inclined to make those more nutrient dense choices and that balance. But then when the time comes, now that you're not only are you eating like wholesome, balanced meals, now physically you're going to feel more satisfied. So those physical cravings are going to happen a lot less. And then when you have those psychological cravings, you're going to understand that it is truly psychological and emotional, and it's not physical. Because what happens very often when we work with clients, if you can think of a Venn diagram, if I were to draw a Venn diagram, a lot of us have our physical hunger, which could be like skipping meals, missing nutrients, not eating enough, or, overtraining or whatever it is. And then psychological hunger is like, not taking time for yourself, not setting boundaries, not saying no, overworking, overextending yourself, right? Emotionally, we're like exhausted, especially women, right? So we have our physical hunger and we have our psychological hunger. And if you can picture a Venn diagram, 99% of the women that we work with are falling into the middle, which is that danger zone. That's that overlap. So if you could heal your relationship with food and actually start focusing on just balanced meals consistently, and, the fundamental things like hydrating with water and all those things, now when you have a craving, you're going to understand that it actually is very much emotional. So the answer is not in the food. The answer is delegation. The answer is stress management. The answer is communication. The answer is something so much bigger than food. And that is where this healing starts. So for those who are, wondering how am I going to get there and how am I going to do that, start with at least challenging the narrative about like this food is bad for me or good for me or all that. And instead look at it of, how it's going to make you feel. And then slowly start to work in on, I can't pour from an empty cup. So where do I need to delegate? Who do I have to ask for help? Like, how can I create some space and time where I can be alone with my thoughts and my feelings so that I'm not like feeling completely out of control at the end of the day or the end of the week?
I have never heard psychological hunger described that way, and it's like really, really eye-opening. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
It made me think too about the polarization. Like once I don't know if this has happened for you because Nina and I have been on this journey actually kind of at the same time. We used to diet together and now we're learning more food freedom. And I would be like, oh, cool. Like I'm going to take the kids for donuts because I'm not like worried about that shit anymore. And then I would be like, oh, but like you could have protein too. Like you don't have to like pick one or the other. Like you don't just like, okay, now I have food freedom and so I don't care about the foods that I'm putting in my body. So I've been reminding myself, oh yeah, go have whatever you want. But like your body really likes protein and you feel so much better when you have some protein in the day. So just have both.
They don't cancel each other out.
They don't cancel each other out.
I've said that before because again, you mentioned earlier all or nothing. Like I think we are so prone in this culture, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just everybody's like this, but that like if I, do this, then I'm killing it. And if I don't do this, I've completely failed. And it's like, no, like if you have a salad at lunch with fried chicken in it, it's still like you still had lettuce. Like it's still got nutrients and minerals in it. There's still protein in the chicken, even if it's like fried in oil, whatever. Like those are just parts of foods and like it's okay to eat them.
1,000%. You need that every once in a while. We need that psychological satisfaction, so what I usually say when you're building a meal, think about it. You want a carbohydrate, a protein, a fat, and then a fruit or vegetable. And then also flavor or, fun.
Enjoyment.
Enjoyment, right? And when you can practice that and you have that most of the time, you're going to be more satisfied. And that's where, when I was deep in my disordered eating, and I was where I'd probably call it like a touch of orthorexia. I was so fixated on eating healthy food. At one point in my life, I was a gluten-free vegan. God help me.
What is left? Ice?
You just drinking water.
I'll tell you, carrots and hummus is what is left. And there would be times like I would binge on an entire bag of carrots and an entire tub of hummus because it was like, I was full. Like I ate so many vegetables that day. I ate so many beans that day. So like physically I was full, okay, yes, there was definitely nutrients missing, but we're not even going to go there. But like physically very full, psychologically not satisfied,
right?
Because I just wanted chips or I just wanted whatever it was that I was craving at the time. I wasn't allowing myself to have it. And if I would have just had, maybe some carrots and hummus and some chips, I probably would have been satisfied with like this much of, you guys, I don't know if everybody can see my hands, but like a circle much or whatever, or 2 handfuls or whatever. But instead I could not stop.
Yeah.
And so going back to your point before with like the donuts and pairing it with the protein, blah, blah, blah. Very often what I just taught about this recently on, I just like retaught it. I teach it a lot, but on my Instagram, you can go back and watch a video on it. It's like how to satisfy a craving without a binge. And I'll give you guys like a 4-step series with it, which is basically the first thing is pause. So I created this acronym a few years ago. Pause stands for P, pay attention, A, assess how you feel, U, understand why you feel that way, S, set up a plan, and then E, execute that plan. So whenever you're feeling the urge to binge or to have I want that ice cream or whatever it is that you're thinking, take a minute, pause. You might still want it or you might not, but take a minute. So pause, pay attention, assess how you feel, understand why you feel that way, set up a plan and execute that plan. Now, when you're setting up the plan could be, first you need to ask yourself, what am I in the mood for? Do I want something hot or cold? Do I want something crunchy or smooth? Do I want something solid or liquid? Do I want to eat it with a spoon or do I want to eat it with a fork or do I want to bite into it? What type of experience are you looking for? And I know this seems like a lot, but if you get good at practicing this, you can pretty soon you're like, I want salty sweet. Okay, cool. What are my options? Your brain said you wanted ice cream. Do you want the ice cream? Cool. Or did you, when you realize you're like salty sweet, I could also probably have, I don't know, apple with peanut butter. Is that satisfying? I don't know. You have to know you have to practice this. It's not black or white. And that's what people so badly just want the answer.
Right.
But sometimes that answer for you is going to be like, for example, let's give you the ice cream example. Sometimes that answer might be you'll have like a halo top or one of those like kind of like lower calorie, higher protein ice creams or something. But then sometimes if you choose that, maybe you need 10 of them before you feel satisfied. So you're like, you know what? No, I want the real deal. Like I'm good with the real deal and I'm going to sit with it and I'm going to eat it mindfully. But often with those cravings, you do usually most of the time, if as you work on healing your relationship with food, you're going to actually find that the, apple with peanut butter or the dark chocolate covered almonds or the little bit of dark chocolate or the chocolate covered strawberries. I like chocolate, as you can tell.
There's a theme here.
Those are equally as satisfying if you were to have the real deal. But then there's every once in a while, you're going to want the real deal. And that's also okay too.
Right.
And everyone's different. And I think it's important for people to understand that they both can fit. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And actually the whole idea of like snack pairings or, having like a high protein donut that you made from, or protein pancakes or whatever it is, like if you feel more, physiologically, you are going to feel more satisfied if you do that. So that's fine. But it also doesn't have to be that way every single time. Like it's okay to just have a regular pancake. Like it's okay to have regular pasta. It's okay to have regular cookies, not the ones that are whole grain, high fiber, high protein, blah, blah, blah. It's okay sometimes, as long as your body agrees with it and you can psychologically actually be okay with having, 2 of them then cool, or 3. I don't want to give a number, but point being is like, the more you work on building that trust within yourself, the easier it will get for you to be able to actually, I know people think sounds wild, but there are people that have 1 cookie and are satisfied.
The self-trust thing is something we come back to all the time.
Yeah, you can do it. It takes time to cultivate it because we've been taught to like not trust our bodies for so long. But
when I first started just like saying, okay, whatever, just like have the damn ice cream. There is a process where you're like,
it's almost scary.
Yeah, and then you just kind of go, okay, well, I understand this is how it's happening now, but then now over time, I'm like, ooh, I'm so excited. I'm going to enjoy this because sometimes you do just choose the ice cream. Yeah. And I think, whenever we've talked with intuitive eating coaches, it's learning how to find that balance. It's learning how to find what works for you. It's not deferring to what someone is telling you is right for you. It's really you looking within. But then I think the most important thing that you said was just, what's really important is regardless of what that decision is, the psychological and emotional abuse that you put on yourself is really the most important thing, right? So learning how to cultivate better self-talk around the decisions that you have, regardless if you made the decision that was right in the moment or not. Oops, yeah, I did have 5 cookies and my stomach really hurts and I feel like my blood sugar is crashing and I don't feel great. And I'm also not going to beat myself up over it. I think that is the way to continue to move towards this relationship of food freedom and healing within. A lot of it is just that voice that talks to us when we make certain food selections.
And it is a practice, like you said.
It
you
is
have
a
to
practice.
It, and you get better at it over time.
Yeah.
It's a practice, and it's also, you have to practice your response because I think a lot of the biggest misconception, even when you get to food freedom, is you still might have those thoughts. Like you still might immediately be like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. And then you realize, wait a minute, why?
It's like dating. You're like, should I call my ex? I don't know. Yeah. And I stole that from someone else who said, I think it was Dr. Lisa Folden who said
it was.
You want to pick up that phone sometimes. You want to be like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But you shouldn't do it.
You don't act on it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can think about it. It's okay to think about it.
Well, it's the impulsivity that gets us in trouble very often in a lot of reasons, in a lot of ways. So, and I'm a big impulsive person when it comes to spending. Oh, like so many reasons. Like I'm very impulsive, which can be a blessing and then it could also be a curse. So one of the things that's just a good practice is to just like pause and think it through. Yeah. And if you like the end of that story when you think it through, then go for it. But if you don't like the end of that story, then you're going to change the path of it.
What a powerful, powerful thing. A pause. Just take a little beat.
Well, Toni, we so appreciate you connecting with us today and just sharing your perspective. And I love this idea of sort of the physical hunger and the emotional hunger and how we can better tune in. I think overall, the goal of this podcast is to offer people different lenses and perspectives for how they can connect better with themselves and better understand what their body needs, and look inward for that self-worth rather than looking outward. And so thank you so much for such a meaningful conversation. Let our listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at tips_with_Toni with an I. I'm also on other platforms like Facebook and TikTok, but Instagram is probably the place I hang out the most. And my book you can get on Amazon if interested. It's called Once Upon a Diet, and there is an audio version, a paperback, and an ebook version.
Does
and
it come?
Do the audio.
Does it come with a glass slipper?
Yeah.
No, I wish it did. That would have been a cute idea.
Well, I will not be squeezing my feet into any shoes that fit anytime soon. So thank you for that, Toni.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much, Toni. And if you're looking to get in touch with us, you can reach us at podcast@WeShape.com. We love your feedback. We love your stories. So don't forget to reach out to us. And we will see everyone next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.